On a frigid, remote planet, you receive the first transmission you've heard in years. It's garbled and full of static, but you recognize two distinct voices. Those of Stanley and Clark. If they are still alive somehow, it's probably for a reason worth knowing. If these idiots somehow survived an apocalypse that wiped out even the most advanced of races, maybe you can live for many more years to come. Time to find longevity. The ruins of a civilization are no stranger to you, but there's something different about the atmosphere. As if someone else is waiting for you. The cold shoulder. What can I say about this little gem? Well, let me start by saying it's a near perfect adventure. In a Sporepedia that's getting flooded with crappy short adventures, this is a real nice change of pace. When it comes to Spore adventures, the cold shoulder is as good as it gets. It's near perfect in story, atmosphere and level design, the ending, the gameplay and the length. Let me just start by telling you about the story. The story of this adventure really surprised me. It starts off innocent enough and somehow even quite lighthearted. Like I said in the intro, it starts off by hearing a signal from the infamous Stanley and Clark, Spore's two favorite halfwits. After seeing the familiar sight of your captain landing on another planet that's filled with adventure, the first thing you see is a radio recording left by Jargran. It gives you a quick rundown about what happened to the planet and the civilization that was present there. Jargran is a scientist that basically went to the planet for the same reason as you, to find out why the civilization went extinct. Keep in mind though, you are expected to be familiar with the story from HRMatthew's previous adventures. If you are not, it won't be that big of a problem, but it is really recommended. Well, I won't spoil the storyline anymore, but I can say that it gets gradually darker as you progress. Even though it's quite dark, the story does have its humorous moments from time to time, and it's added in such a way that it's never really misplaced. You search the desk for any useful geographic information. A lot of it are mundane journal entries, quantum mechanic books, and materials with questionable sexual depictions. I really don't know whether I should laugh or cry, really. What I really like about the story is that it's not just a linear path, with constant do this and do that and you're finished objectives, like most Spore adventures, especially the ones made by Maxis. But it feels really free and open. There are even two different endings. I mean, come on, that doesn't happen a lot. So, what I also really enjoy is that the adventure tries to build on the existing lore and improve further on it. And I must say it's done very well when it comes to Spore adventures. For example, you learn about the Dweeble civilization and its disappearance. Why there seems to be, unfortunately for us, an infinite amount of Stanley and Clark adventures. The lore the adventure creates is established rather good, with the right amount of background information and explanation. What I also really appreciate is that a lot of questions that you might ask yourself while playing get answered. Like, let me give you an example. As you can see, there are a lot of wrecked cars around here. One of the first questions I asked myself because of that was, why do they have these old-fashioned cars if they were one of the most advanced civilizations to exist? Well, guess what? There's a sign here that explains just that. And I think that's a real nice touch of reflection from the creator. He really thought about what he made. If you are only into cheery Spore adventures with rainbows and things like that, this will feel like a huge difference for you. I do encourage you to check it out though. However, if you are easily disturbed, you might want to skip this one. I also wouldn't recommend it to children because of certain parts of the adventure that might come off as too graphic or too scary for them. The adventure is also not entirely free of curses and swear words. So if you have a problem with that, you might want to skip this one. That brings me to the last and often most important part of the story, the ending. Was the ending any good, you might ask? Well, my answer is here is a little bit odd, but I'd say yes and no. There are two different endings like I said before, which is a nice touch. Both of them leave you feeling weird, in a good way I mean. But the main problem I have with it is that, in my opinion, it's not that relevant. The ending is great for Spore Adventure, don't get me wrong, but compared to the other themes this adventure dealt with, it's a little underwhelming. After playing the adventure, I didn't reflect on what I had just played. I do understand, however, that this is not a work of poetry, but a Spore adventure. The Spore engine is very limiting, so not everything can be perfect. For the ending of a Spore adventure, this was still highly above average. Anyway, that brings me to my second point, the atmosphere and level design. Let me just say this. The level design in this adventure is gorgeous and the atmosphere is top notch. I think, in my opinion, it's comparable to the atmosphere in games like Fallout 3. The area really has a post-apocalyptic feeling to it. But it's still quite believable that this used to be a city where people lived. Vehicles are scattered everywhere in believable places. There is a broken down highway. You really get the feeling that this was a main street-like area before the disaster. That happened here. Something that could have been improved is the variety in buildings. From all the buildings that are present there, only a few buildings are unique. It would have been nice if there had been buildings and clutter with a little more characteristics. Broken down advertisements, an abandoned cinema, or other things like that add flavor to the scene. But I understand, the in-game adventure creator is really limited, so this little point of criticism can be easily forgiven. Overall, like I said, the atmosphere was amazing, even coming close to games like Fallout 3. The level design itself was sometimes a little bit clunky and I got stuck the first time playing this adventure. I might have fallen and I might not be able to get out of here. So, yeah. Time to restart, I guess. But that's not the creator's fault, in my opinion. But rather just Spore's weird collision detection. Because of this, the interiors of buildings might be a little difficult to navigate sometimes. Which brings me to the gameplay. It's most of the time the same stuff as in other Spore adventures. You do have to pay attention a lot more this time, though, because not all objectives are marked on the map, so you have to keep an eye on the road. The objectives themselves are intriguing, but performing them is just the same as in other Spore adventures. Walk there, get this, bring that. But again, these are basically just limitations of the Spore in-game adventure creator. And there's not much the creator can do about it, I reckon. The gameplay is neither the best nor the most important part of the adventure in my opinion. What the adventure lacks in engaging gameplay, it makes up for in atmosphere and story. The atmosphere and the story also make it so that you never really get bored. There's always something interesting around and there's always a goal to complete, which gives you another piece of the puzzle that is this adventure. Well, this brings me to my last point, the length. The length is perfect in my opinion. It took me 40 minutes to complete the first time, and that's just with one ending. I did record during it though, and I tried to find every detail, so I reckon it would take someone who's just playing it casual around half the time. However, it does take quite a long time to download and load the adventure, so if you are going to play it, you might want to start loading it 10 minutes beforehand. You could use these 10 minutes for example to get coffee. I mean, who doesn't like coffee? Well, actually a lot of people don't like coffee. But yeah, you get my point. Anyway, my point is, if you don't have time to wait 10 minutes, you might want to wait with playing until you have the time. In my opinion, the 10-minute wait time was totally worth it and you should just get some work done, like homework or something like that in the meantime. This brings me to the evaluation. Spore, the Cold Shoulder, is an amazing adventure. It's basically a must play for Spore owners. It is a perfect showcase of what the Spore adventure creator is actually capable of, when someone knows how to use it. The story is interesting, the atmosphere is amazing, what's not to like. I highly recommend you to check the adventure out. It's quite underrated for the gem it is. Anyway, this was Alex, have a great day and see you soon. Ah yes, this was my review of the Cold Shoulder. After being in the making for about half a year, it's finally finished. I hope it was worth it.